it was and it wasn't, because it depended on how much I was working. If I would work till midnight or 1 o'clock, it wasn't so wonderful. But
how and when did you meet your first wife?
how did I meet Nicole? I met her at a country club dance. It was at the Westport the Northport Country Club in Westport, New York. It was I had a cousin of mine whom I liked very much because she had long, money-colored hair, and she was a nice girl. And she had a wonderful. Her name was wonderful. Her name was Arinelle DeRoy. Isn't that a pretty name? And she was a couple of years older than me, and if she didn't have a date for the country club dance, she bought me another pair of pants, and I went. And it was there that I met Nicole, and she was a woman who was very exciting to me because she was a rather grand woman, and she was an old lady. She was 24 or 25. And
How old were you?
I was 18.
Oh, wow.
And she had homes everywhere. She had homes everywhere. She was an heiress, and she of considerable means, and she had a house in Mexico City, a house in the Ile Saint-Louis in Paris, and a house in Biot in the south of France. Yeah, she did well. And the only problem with that was it was too much traveling.
Too much traveling?
Yeah, that was very exciting to me at the beginning of it, but she never could stay anywhere more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most, and soon everything began to look alike. But it was okay for when it was, and it was okay when it was over.
How long did it last?
I think close to 4 years.
Mexico City was a magnet for parties and very wealthy people during that time. I don't recall that one of the wealthiest women in the world had a home there that she designed in a Japanese style, and people would go and party. Do you remember what it was like to be in Mexico City during that time?
Yes, it was lovely. We had a very nice house on the Reforma, which was the major pathway there, and it was, the social life was wonderful. It was grand. There were Americans, but there were more French and English than there were Americans, and it was the same. And then had a house in Acapulco also. Acapulco at that time was not a big city.
Did you ever make your way to Havana?
Oh yes, I spent a year and a half in Havana. I loved Havana.
Wow.
I just spent a month there, loved it.
Pardon?
I was just there, too.
Oh, I
Different.
was there when, I don't know how, well, different, I'm sure.
You
in
were
a way
there pre-Castro, though, right?
I was there when Castro marched into Havana.
You were there for that?
Yes, I was there, but we were only there we had to be there for 30 days after he came in. But I'm sure it's far better than it was under Batista.
For the people that have stayed there.
For the people there, because there were, the disparity between the very rich, there wasn't a middle class to amount to anything at all.
There isn't really much of a rich or a poor now. It's just kind of everyone's the same.
But there isn't that.
Well, there's the elite, and then
there isn't that big elite that there was then, is there?
Well, I mean, there's the politicians. The Castros have all the money, but everyone, they all have food. They all have education.
They all have food.
Everyone
I'll
has
tell you
housing.
one thing. When I was working at the Crystal Palace there, and this guy who was a choreographer there, who was a Cuban, and I asked him, where do all these children. There were child gangs there. It was an awful kind of thing. I mean, they would come, there was a ferry slip where the ferry came in from Key West. And I think it came twice a day from Key West. And these kids would be there, money, big money, no papa, no mama, no whiskey, soda, virgin sister, 50 cent. And the thing was that they would murder people, these little kids. I mean, they were sick, but they were desperate. They needed food. They needed everything. And I asked this guy out, and at the time the reports were that the Batista regime killed 400 to 500 of them every month. And I said, do all these children come from Havana? He said, no, they don't. Mostly do not come from Havana. They come from the eastern part of the island, from Santiago, or I forget the other cities on the eastern, but that Santiago area. And he said, if you come, if we can come down to the Vedado, around noon tomorrow, we'll go down to the Vedado. And we went down to the Vedado, and these rickety buses came in from the hills, and they were with the animals on top of the buses, and and here are these people throwing these kids out the windows of the bus because. Pardon?
You saw?
Yes, I saw it. It was horrible, and that's how those kids get there, because these people, the church said they couldn't use contraception, and they had all these children, and they could not feed them. They could not do anything, so they would come to they would come to Havana and get, they'd have enough of the bus fare to Havana, and they would go to Havana and get rid of the children. And that's how most of those children got there. That's true in, that's still true in Rio de Janeiro.
Things have gotten much better for the poorer classes.
Pardon?
In Havana, things have gotten much, much better.
Oh, I know. I mean, I know the thing that all cultural events are free.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I mean, you have to, I was reading one supposed criticism of it. It said you have to queue up for the tickets. Well, you have to queue up for the tickets and pay for them here, and you don't have to there. The educational system is
amazing.
Superb.
So many doctors, and the arts are all like they will pay for you to go to art school.
Yes, I know. They pay. They sponsor the ballet. They sponsor the drama schools. They sponsor all the arts. Sculpture, everything is sponsored by. Well, and education is based. I mean, this is not nice of me to say, anyway, but education in Cuba and not only in Cuba, in most countries except the United States, is based on the entrance to the schools is based on a student's ability rather than the ability to pay, which it is here. I mean, that wasn't so true here when I was growing up. That was not true like it is, as true as it is today. I mean, weren't these enormous costs for schools. It's just really repulsive, and I think it's terrible for you people who take student loans to be in debt for the next 20 years for your education. And also I feel it limits the field because the people who cannot pay cannot get in.
That was the thing. You meet the most, like the people who you would assume were really, really poor, but they're doctors. Them and their children.
Yes, and the thing, and when I read the criticisms that doctors get $30 a month.
40.
But it doesn't say 40 now. But it doesn't say they also get their housing, they get their education, their food, their and early retirement.
And a lot of them work as taxi drivers at night to make extra money. But were you there when Fidel and Shea, did you see them marching?
Oh yes. And Shea came to our show a couple of times. I met him.
Did you have to personally meet Shea over there?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
What was he?
That's
What was
amazing.
that like?
What was he like?
Pardon?
What was he like?
Very handsome man. He had a terrible odor about him, but he was known for that, this terrible odor.
Wouldn't bathe for months.
Pardon?
He wouldn't bathe for weeks or months.
But always wore starched shirts. Starched immaculate shirts, but underneath him, I guess, was not so good, but he was a very handsome man and a very charismatic man. The other person I met that was on that scale, who was famous for her charisma, was Evita Peron.
You met Evita?
Well, when I say I met her, we were performing at the Teatro Colón, which is the principal opera house there, and I don't know if it's still done, but for many years, any time you performed in a capital, there would the Minister of Culture would go around to the various theaters and do everything and select certain acts for a command performance before the heads of the country. So we were one of the acts selected to perform for the Perons, and when I say I met her, it was the reception was in the Rose House, the Casa Rosada, and there were 2,000 people in the room. But she held my hand for that minute. This is why I say she was so charismatic for that maybe 30 seconds, a minute. I was alone with her. She was she had that kind of a presence of doing that, and she was just, I mean, that's the, it's an amazing kind of a thing. It would, you know, and I know about charismatic presence is someone of a cousin of mine in Britain, where she describes my mother, and she said, and little Esther with her gay little Esther with her swirling skirts, and had a magnetism that once you were in her magnetic field, a hurricane couldn't dislodge you. And I felt that about Evita Peron.
Wow.
She was that way. I mean, it was to just be there the one time was to understand why she was so important, because so few people have that kind of magnetism or charisma. It's just amazing how anyone possesses that, the ability to draw other people into them. Oh, I'm so envy you, your time in Havana. Wonderful. How long were you there?
A month, and I did photography there.
What a wonderful time. Did you go to Veradero?
Yes.
That's a lovely
And
beach.
Vinales too. Do you know where Vinales is?
Yes, yes.
Stunning there.
I love Veradero, the sand crabs used to come over at 5 o'clock. Used to come over you had to get off had to be indoors at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock when the sand crabs came.
Because
over
they go back into the forest. They go over the road and
I was only in Veradero for like just the better part of a day, but I spent like 3 weeks in Havana itself, and a while in Vinales.
Oh, what a wonderful
In Santa
time.
Clara and
How
Trinidad.
wonderful. I mean,
Did you get to explore a lot of Cuba while you were there?
not that much. I'm Veradero and Vinales, and I was in Santiago once, and in another city at the eastern end. I can't remember the name of it.
Wait, did you get to have, sorry to go back to this, but did you get to have a conversation with Che, or did you just like shake hands with him?
No, I did have somewhat of a conversation with him.
Do you speak Spanish?
My Spanish is not good. It's not good, and I have to say, though I spent much more time in Argentina than I did in Cuba, my Argentine Spanish is worse, because that Argentine dialect is
like Italian maybe, or a
it's
little bit of
well, it's related to it, I think, but it's more of Spanish spoken with an Italian stress, because the principal population of Argentina is Italian. but the like there's no Y sound. It's the zh. I mean, you don't say yo, you say zhou. And you don't say yama, you say jama. Anywhere there's the yo or the Y, it's zh.
They were making fun of Argentinians a lot in Cuba. That was always like the running joke.
It was.
So, yeah, like when lightning strikes, all the Argentinians look up because they think God's taking a picture of them.
Oh, they do. They do. They do. That's exactly
so
how
funny.
That's how the Argentines. That's how the Argentines are. They are just so self-conscious, and not. I don't know that it's all of Argentina, but Buenos Aires definitely has that kind of self-consciousness.
Did you do a lot of traveling with your second wife too?
A good bit, not as much. Not as much, fortunately. I mean, I didn't want to. Those 2 week stays were not. They grew to be very. They grew to be very tiring, and I was. I'd say it was fine while it was, and it was good when it was over. And that's with my second wife, Susie. She was, yeah, I mean, but our traveling was, well, I was going to say it was usually to the same places. It was either to London or to St. Thomas or to, and France.
Were you married twice?
Well, a little more than that.
How many times did you marry?
3 times.
3 times.
Well, 4 times, but the 4th one doesn't count. Oh, it really didn't, because that, I don't even remember that lady's name. Well, the reason that was because that was a commercial deal. It was, this woman had won the Irish sweepstakes, and the lawyer had called me and said, would you marry someone for $30,000? I mean, this is a long time ago, and $30,000 was more money than it is today, much more. And I said, what do you mean? That she won, it was December, and she won the Irish sweepstakes, and she wanted to get the marital exemption. So we met. We went to Alexandria, Virginia, because that was a big marriage mill at that time, and we got married, I think, at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we parted then with the agreement that we had to be married for 30 days, and then I would go to Santo Domingo and get a divorce, and that was all in the thing. So that's why I say I really don't remember.
Did you get the $30,000?
Oh yes.
Wow.
Of course. I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
What'd you do with the $30,000?
What I did with all the money, but
You had some fun.
Well, it was a way of life I had, and I used money, and it was the thing was I never thought about living a long time, and I outlived money. But
By way of life, what do you mean? Were you on the wild side, or did you just like to live in really nice places, dress really nice?
Oh yes, I like nice places. The last time I had money, which was 15 years ago, and then I thought I was going to die, because I had cancer at the time, and I thought I was going to die. So I was living in Los Angeles, but for the fall season, I would take an apartment in New York for $15,000 a month, and stuff like that, and have car service, and the money did not last forever.
I see. Well, you're a survivor. Congratulations.
I'm still alive. I'm 81. And,
What brought you to Santa Barbara?
a dearth of money.
And do you find that it's easy?
Well, I had family here. I only have, one now, but I had more family here years ago. I'd come here before, and it was the cheapest place I could get to live.
In your life, you've had millions, far more than any of us. I'm speaking for myself. What now, after all of this experience, how do you measure wealth? Would you say something, if you could look
I
back?
think it's grand to have. It's very nice to have. I have an aversion to people who are sycophantic, who admire wealth, who have that admiration for wealth. I don't have an admiration for wealth. I think it's very nice to utilize wealth. But I had a friend when I lived at the other place who I really couldn't stand after a while when he told me he did this and he met the wealthiest woman he ever met. I said, that's marvelous. Does she go to the bathroom?
Well, what kind of advice would you give to young people having to do with, money and career? What can you say?
The measures of wealth.
Well, I think it's very nice to have a nice standard of living and be able to do whatever you want, and if you can work at something that brings you joy, I think that's much nicer than people who just work for money. There are many, unfortunately, the society is very much, when I describe this thing about someone I knew at Friendship Manor, unfortunately, he's representative of a great many people who base everything on money.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about giving back? You've given back so much, and especially you began that way in your life. How does that feel like wealth to you? Do you think that changed you in terms of, because you said do something that you enjoy?
Well, it was always just essential to do what you could for others. That was, I think that had to do with my background, because it was always something that was very important. To be, it's just a very good feeling to be able to do for others, and but I have to tell you, I get very angry with a lot of people with the charities, because I don't like it when they have to have their name attached. I feel that's not charity anymore. That's buying recognition rather than charity. An example was the Mellons. The University of Pittsburgh was in 1930 had gone broke because they built this enormous building, a 39-story building, the Cathedral of Learning, and the Mellons offered to bail them out, but only if they would change the name of it to Mellon University of Pittsburgh. They refused. They refused, so later they gave the money to the Carnegie Tech, and that became Carnegie Mellon. But they would not do something. Why people with that kind of money could not do anything without having recognition? And there are many like that.
It's like the Cottage Hospital here. We have Ridley. The Ridley Tree Pavilion is named after Lady Ridley, who donated all that money.
Well, these people are insistent on it, and they. I think it's sad that they need that kind of recognition. And that's the term of giving. It's the way it is. There are a lot of people like that. I think it's awful when charities publish directories saying how much this is a class of patrons, this is a class of this, giving so much and so much.
What do you do now for fun or to bring you joy?
Well, right now I'm doing some editing that's both bringing me, it's editing, is editing manuscripts of an aunt of mine who wrote a wonderful memoirs of my family, and I'm enjoying and not enjoying. It makes me very sad when and also the fact that these people aren't around.
Did you have any siblings?
I had one, but that was not a happy thing. I mean, my brother was. I was reading the descriptions of him because he was a very unusual child. It was in a fairly affluent family. He was the only child. And my mother had 4 siblings, and my father had 4 siblings. No one else had any children, and he was the only one. And he was bright, and he was beautiful. And in reading, I knew he was 4 years older than I was, so I knew something about it, but I certainly knew about him as he was after I was born. But in reading it, it was how he was a restless child. He didn't sleep much. So at 1.5 years, my mother had him doing Latin conjugations and declensions. And he had an eidetic memory, and it was probably his downfall. And my mother just thought he was terribly spoiled because all these people catered to him. And she did think him, he walked at an early age and talked at a very early age, and he was doing, by the time I was born, he was 4, and he was doing quadratic equations. And he was an unusually bright child and very precocious, but then it started, then the malfunctions started, and he, my aunt in this memoir says, feels that part of it was this eidetic memory, that someone who can retain everything gets really, is awful because your head is too crowded. And that may have been part of the reason, and then they couldn't, he became violent, and he became destructive, and one of my mother's brothers was a psychiatrist, and at that time they had not defined child insanity. So everywhere my uncle would read, someone somewhere had a child with a similar background, and he would, the psychiatrist was attempting to treat. She would go wherever it was. She went to Vienna, she went to Shanghai, she went with him. She took those trips with him and with attendants. She had to have attendants with her because he was violent. And we had restraint rooms in the houses, so it was not, everything wasn't all wonderful.
And how long did he live?
Until he was 56.
Mm.
And he was in the first study where they defined David M. Levy, who was the Dean of Child Psychiatry in the United States, in 1937 or 38. Howard was in the first study group where they defined child schizophrenia. Mm. And his had a fancier name, oligophrenia. If schizophrenia is a split personality, oligophrenia is an entirely fragmented personality that really defies measurement. Mm. Oh my God. I was his guardian after the rest of the people were dead. Mm. Mm. And that was a sad kind of life. And he lived at home always.
Mm-hmm. He never could go work and so on.
No, and my mother would not ever have him institutionalized because, I understand I resented it at the time, but I understood later because a contentious child in an institutional setting is going to be mistreated. Mm-hmm. Because he's going to antagonize the attendants, he's going to antagonize others.
Better to have him at home.
No.
Oh my gosh, I realize we've
taken much too much.
No, it's fantastic. I know that they have a class to go to, and we need to to wrap up, and we just want to celebrate you. Thank you very much. Really fascinating stories.
Thank you for listening.
Really fascinating.